This podcast is brought to you by Rainbarrel. Rainbarrel is a cookieless consented audience graph that helps advertisers interact with their best fit customers. Digital advertising shouldn't be a black box, which is why Rainbarrel was created by media buyers for media buyers. With over 12,000 public audiences, Rainbarrel has helped renowned brands like a large golf retailer explode their campaign reach by millions just by tapping into the right audience for golf course and country club visitors. Try out Rainbarrel audiences on DV360, The Trade Desk, LiveRamp, and beyond, or learn more at rbarrel.com. That's rbarrel.com. Welcome to the Marketecture Podcast. I'm Ari Paparo. I'm joined today by Eric Franchi and Ron Jacobson, friend of the pod and the CEO of Rockerbox.
Yeah, excited to be here.
So Ron's here to talk about the state of attribution, which should be a really interesting subject. We also have a ton of news. We're going to deep dive on the Colossus thing that's been going around, as well as news from Netflix, AI stuff. There's just an enormous amount of stuff going on. Also a reminder that the IAB Tech Lab videos are continuing. So this week we put out the Vast interview with me. Next week will be OpenRTB with Bill Simmons. So that's all exciting. Meanwhile, let's do a fit check. So what does your t-shirt say, Eric?
My t-shirt says, feed DSPs what they eat.
It's funny, I'm wearing the same t-shirt. My wife saw this, and I've never seen her more confused about a t-shirt before. She really just stared at it for quite some time, probably just looking at my pecs. But, you know, so this was the title of our podcast from, I think, 3 weeks ago when Chris Kane came on. He coined this amazingly evocative phrase, and he blessed us with some limited edition t-shirts. So if you see Chris, I think he has some extras you could ask for.
Yeah, ask him.
All right. So, Ron, you and I worked together at AppNexus many years ago. You decided to strike out on your own as an entrepreneur, and you decided to take on attribution as a standalone problem. Tell us about how that journey happened, and tell us what Rockerbox does.
No, definitely. It's been quite a journey. So we started the business around 10 years ago, but only got into the attribution space around 5 years ago. Our first 5 years, we actually managed media, selling IOs into agencies, the classic business. What we learned really quickly was that the ways that companies are measuring their marketing kind of sucks. They didn't provide me as the media buyer any tools I actually needed to optimize, understand what performance is happening, where I'm not underperforming, delayed reporting, just like very antiquated. And that led us just around 5 years ago to completely pivot the company into the marketing attribution space. Fast forward today, you work with brands like Staples, Weight Watchers, Lowe's Hotels, provide them with full measurement across online, offline, paid and organic media.
Right. When you did this, I was sort of jealous because I said to myself, with cookies going away and with walled gardens everywhere, the one thing that is an opportunity that crosses all media is attribution. And I feels like you're executing against that.
Yeah, listen, you're not wrong there. There's definitely been a lot of change in the past 5 years, from cookies to Apple changes to walled gardens rising. Also, like historical methodologies that weren't popular for a long time are starting to become back in vogue. Like media mix modeling is back in vogue now. So there's just been a lot of change. At the same time, I think it's actually kind of the most interesting time in quite a while. I think a lot of like the 10 years ago paradigms of third-party cookies being how you measure marketing are finally going away, despite a lot of the fear mongering out there. I think we spent a lot of time trying to put the square peg of channels that have nothing to do with cookie into like the round hole of third-party cookies. So I'm glad that's finally gone. It's still not perfect, but I think we're making a lot of good progress.
Right. So what methods are going away and what methods are coming up?
Well, third-party cookies. I mean, whenever Google actually does what they do, it's kind of irrelevant at this point. But I think the notion that we can't take every single marketing channel and somehow pretend that third-party cookies can measure it is finally gone. Which is great because people are trying to figure out ways to take linear TV and podcasts and radio and pretend that you can measure that with third-party cookies.
When you say, sorry, I'm going to interrupt. When you say third-party cookies are going away, we all know that. But are you also implying that last click and view through attribution are the victims of the cookie?
No, not at all. So I think this comes to like, there are different ways of measuring your marketing. You have the classic kind of path to conversion based ways of measuring your marketing. Some call it multi-touch attribution. That's where you get to your rule-based methodologies, first touch, last touch, even weight. So you have media mix modeling, you have geo-testing, you have surveys, you have benchmarks, a couple different ways to measure. The first one, path to conversion, is actually, I think, better now than ever. It's just not relying on third-party cookie data. So can you still figure out what was the last touch the last way to convert? You definitely can. You can use first-party cookies. You can use data partnerships to understand, somebody viewed an ad on Snapchat and then came to my website and converted. That requires partnerships between measurement companies and walled gardens to get access to data. But mind you, that's deterministic data. It's first-party data. So it's actually higher resolution measurement than in a way what used to happen with third-party cookies. So no, very much marketers are still using a lot of stuff more than you might expect. A lot, though, we're obviously trying to move beyond that. Data-driven attribution models, but that's still understanding the path to conversion and using that as like the primary method on which to think about what's actually driving my marketing.
So do you get impression level data from walled gardens?
Yeah, it's actually kind of nuts. So we've struck partnerships in the last 4 or 5 years with Snapchat, Pinterest, TikTok, Reddit, not to mention the OTT, CTV providers that give us access to user level user data. Frankly, when I first started this business, I thought that would be, kind of impossible. I knew we'd never be able to get over Facebook, Google. It's been really interesting to see kind of the next tier of publisher realizing they need to actually provide more to kind of catch up. So it's been pretty impressive, actually. Good for those guys. I mean, they've done a really good job of providing more data such that they can actually showcase that they're performing.
And so what extent do your customers want to see really good attribution within a channel, like Snapchat, let's say, versus across channels where there may be some blank spots?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it really comes to who you're talking about. And this is also where measurement is really dependent on who the stakeholder is in our company. The CMO is looking for something very differently than the VP marketing, but just looking for something very differently than the media traders in platform. In platform, honestly, like if you're the Facebook guy at your company, even if you pay for third-party measurement like Rockerbox or someone else, they're often going to just be logging into Facebook and using Facebook's own reporting, for better or for worse. Just like operationally, it kind of makes sense. The VP of marketing is trying to think a little bit around like where do I allocate budgets across channels. They really do want to start having measurement methodologies. The CMO is more focused on forward-looking budgeting. They are more looking for media mix modeling and tools like that to try to figure out where should they be spending their budget. So it really just depends on the stakeholder.
What is triangulation? You told me this was the new buzzword. I don't know what it means.
Yeah, you and nobody else. Basically, what the best brands are doing these days is they're realizing that every measurement methodology is flawed, right? Nothing was perfect. Media modeling is flawed, MTA is flawed, geotesting, they're all flawed. So nevertheless, they all have pros. They all have different kind of use cases. And because of that, most of the largest brands are actually employing multiple methodologies. They're using MMM and MTA and holdout testing, and that's frankly just confusing because you're using different methodologies, which fundamentally will have different results. So triangulation is this term that the measurement world is trying to come up with, for how do we combine disparate results into one number? How do I combine the fact that my MMM says that my graded SCM sucks with the fact that my MTA says it's great? So it's the process by which we combine these disparate numbers. Now, I think it's a popular word. There is no real understanding of what it means, though, and how do you actually do that in practice?
Yeah, I've talked to marketers who want to do something dramatic, like go dark on YouTube for a month just to see what happens. And then they effectively use that as sort of a rule of thumb. They said, well, when we went dark on YouTube, sales went down by X%. So we'll just apply that moving forward as part of our process.
Yeah, that comes to the testing experiment way of marketing measurement. Some do it by holdouts, some will do geo-testing, stop serving in New Jersey, compare that to New York. So it's actually a very popular way of measuring marketing today. It's actually pretty effective. It's just logistically pretty difficult. You pull back your YouTube, but is any other change happening? You're actually controlling properly? Are your competitors making changes? There's an actual revenue cost to pulling out of YouTube. So are you going to do that for a month or 3 months or 6 months? Are you going to take your YouTube holdout test from January and apply those results in December? Probably not. So when do you have to run the second test? So it just becomes a world of a lot. It's operationally really difficult. When a brand is doing MTA, media mix modeling, maybe it used to be once a year, now it's down to weekly. Some people do it monthly. They do experiments once a quarter. There's just a lot of different things happening. And yeah, it's honestly not an easy time to be a marketer these days, given that you need to use all these different types of measurement. But yeah, YouTube holdout testing is pretty popular.
Let's talk about MMM, media mix modeling. So it seems like it's coming up all the time. And it used to be that media mix modeling was sort of a specialized once a year sort of thing done by your agency for many hundreds of thousands of dollars in a black box. And now it appears, I made some comment on Twitter about, I think it's a good opportunity moving forward. And I had like 5 startups reach out to me like, oh, we do that. It's easy. So what's going on? Is there a revival in MMM?
Well, Rockerbox does that too, so I'll give a plug for ourselves. But for an answer, yes, there is a revival of MMM. And frankly, it's from all the privacy headwinds that have been facing. So when people hear third-party cookies going away, data loss, can track cross platforms, ATT, all these things. MMM has done a really good job, frankly, of capitalizing on all that fear and coming to market back with a solution. So I think there are like market reasons why it's become more popular. There are also technical reasons why it's become more popular as well. It's easier than ever to actually consolidate all of your marketing spend across all your last channels for the past 2 years. It's still harder than you think, but it's faster than it can be done in the past. It can be done in a more repeated process. It's also just easier to actually build a model and to run it, thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of times, try to find the best model out there. This is also, at the same time, you have Google launching Meridian, their open source continuous modeling product. Facebook launched Robin, Uber launched one. So a lot of those guys are also pushing in the MM world as well. So yeah, they're just a lot of momentum. I think, though, it's, I posted this thing last week, kind of the Gartner hype cycle about a measurement. I think MM is actually like right before the peak of inflated expectations, though. And that's not to say that I think long-term it's not a part of a measurement mix. I think it is. But I think everyone's kind of viewing it as like this panacea that's going to solve every measurement problem. And that's just not the case. It's really good at certain things, but budgeting, forecasting, understanding the incrementality of your next ad dollar, but on a more tactical day-to-day basis, it's not potentially that useful. Understanding how channels interact with each other and time to conversion and path to conversion. So, it's great for certain things, and it definitely has a lot of momentum because of that. But like I said, the best brands are using multiple methodologies.
Right. I think it's interesting that the big parties like Google are giving away MMM models because presumably they think they're under invested in when many marketers think they're over invested in.
It's actually really interesting. So I have a thesis that they're looking more towards trying to drive budget towards YouTube, and MMM is a better way to do that than last click. So I think that's kind of their selfish reason for doing this as well. I also think maybe this is too long term, but who knows where the world goes in search with whatever's happening in AI. And if people are going less to a search engine, bottom of funnel, SEM, they're going to be consuming content. So I think anything that makes YouTube look better is good for Google. Having said that, their open source package is pretty good. So I give them credit.
Right. And so MMM, I think you had a tweet about this, and I agreed with it, but then I'm not sure you did have a tweet about it, so I'm trying to remember, which is sort of that MTA, multi-touch attribution, was a dead end and is dying. And also, I have a follow-up question to that, but is that your point of view, that MTA was a dead end and is dying, or am I mischaracterizing your position entirely?
No, I completely disagree. I think MTA, based off third-party cookies, was a false premise from day one. And I think that was the big problem. Everyone thought we can build a perfect path to conversion using third-party cookies, and they tried that for a decade and it went nowhere. So I think that was, again, the original sin of MTA. I think today, MTA, based off first-party data, striking data partnerships when you can, some probabilistic modeling, is actually a better result than what you had in a third-party cookie world. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. There are gaps. There are data gaps. There are certain challenges still, but I don't think MTA is dead at all. It's actually likely our fastest growing business line still, despite us having a medium smaller product.
Okay, so you're saying that MTA based on cookies was a bad idea, but new MTA is a good idea.
Yes, I think it can be really effective. I think you can get better, more deterministic, higher quality data to build a path to conversion. But again, are you going to be able to answer the question? This is the example everyone always does. They go, well, somebody recommended, bonobos to me. That's not going to make a path to conversion. No, it's not. Okay. But it's also not going to be in a media mix model. It's not going to be in a geo hold on test. So I think you just need to accept the fact that none of these things are perfect. Just understand why are you using each tool, and then use the right tool to answer the right question.
When I was at Beeswax, I was sort of a little bit obsessed with ghost bidding. That seems to have died because we don't have identity to fake the bids. Am I accurate, or is there still a future for ghost bidding?
Ghost bidding in the programmatic sense is pretty dead. People have replaced it more with geotesting. So again, I'm not going to serve in Trenton, New Jersey, and I'll compare that to Philadelphia. It is actually still being used though for marketing with first-party data, like CRM marketing. So email marketing, they'll do holdout tests there at a user level. Direct mail, the holdout for certain addresses and see if those addresses converted. So again, when you have a deterministic identifier per user, there is still some form of ghost bidding or holdout testing there. In cases where there isn't, like linear TV and things like that, that's where a geo-based approach is being taken these days.
Ron, it seems that AI is one of those things that could be incredibly transformational for attribution and MMM. As a 10-year-old company, how are you incorporating AI today, and what's your general view of it, in the near term and long term?
We've been using AI primarily more on the now we have results of a model, what do we do with it side of measurement? Because that's actually probably the biggest problem with all measurement. Flaws aside, data issues aside, it's fine. I have the results. Now what? I think that's actually where we've been seeing internally and are pretty far along with some beta tests there. AI pretty effective. Okay, these are my results. What are 4 media plans based off these results? And what are the expected impacts of those 4 results? So I think that's where it's going to play the best role. There are some other areas in terms of like audience creation based off the results of attribution that I'm seeing it play a bit of a role also in terms of feeding in measurement results into DSPs or buying platforms for them to optimize against. And optimization apparently is AI-based these days. I don't fully know what that means, but that's what they say. So yeah, I think in terms of closing the loop that way, there could be a role there also.
Ron, maybe take us through the journey from the smallest companies to the largest of how they think about this problem. Because the way I would posit it is that the number of channels probably scales almost linearly with the size of the company. A small company does no marketing or just does search, then they add Meta, then they add Snap, then suddenly they have billboards, and suddenly you have a marketing department that can't even figure out where all their data is. How do small companies approach the problem, medium, large?
The number of channels is actually a really good proxy, and we think about that a lot ourselves. We think about it in terms of number of channels and actually distribution of spend. If 90% of your ad budget is on 2 channels, your measurement's not that complicated. But I'll kind of start from the beginning. Small companies, they're picking up their first marketing channel. They're just going to use what that platform reports. So if you're just buying Facebook, if you're just buying Google, you're going to log into Facebook and Google, look at the CPM rows they're reporting, and that's going to be your source of truth. The next step that's going to happen eventually is Google Analytics. Even if you just have 2 channels, you're going to eventually go to GA and start to see what GA reports out in terms of your marketing performance. And that probably works until you scale to roughly 5 channels. So I see clients that are live on email, affiliate, Facebook, Meta, Bing, still using GA. That's kind of their source of truth. Once you get past there is sort of when they no longer have their finger on the pulse. They can't really anymore understand, like, if I increase this channel by X, what's the impact of my revenue? And that's generally when they pick their first step of measurement. If it's MTA or MMM or holdout testing, I've seen all of them play out, to be frank. And then as they scale, eventually they get all 3 types of measurement. They get data warehouse, all their log level data feeding into their data warehouse. The largest brands are using measurement companies actually more as kind of like a data aggregator and collector. And then they're actually building some of their own measurement in-house on top of those data sets. So that's, I think, the most scaled clients where we see it.
And if you have all that data in a data warehouse, then the process of media mix modeling becomes pretty interesting because you draw all sorts of correlations of spend versus revenue and things like that.
And that's also where the largest companies, there's not one media mix model they're going to build. They're going to build 20 media mix models, all against different KPIs and different goals or on a per geo basis. And that's also, frankly, where a lot of the open source tools have been a nice win for those brands. I am seeing actually a good number of earlier stage companies dip their toes into MMM because of the open source tools. There's kind of the classic problem where, you build a model once, but you rarely build it the second time. It doesn't become part of their sort of motion as a company.
Right. And so what is the future like? And specifically, how does the day after cookies go away look for marketers?
Great. I wish it was tomorrow, or rather, I wish it was today. I think it's actually not too dissimilar from where we are right now. They're going to be using multiple measure methodologies. They're going to have all this data in the data warehouse. I think the most interesting part of the future is how can we use things like AI actually to try to consolidate the disparate results from different methodologies and to help create answers. I think the biggest problem with measurement, again, is you have all this data, you have results. It's the now what problem. And I've seen many, many companies fail there. So I think AI can actually help a good amount there. There's still a lot TBD there.
There's a great conversation. No, I'm not going to disagree. I think you know a lot more about this than I do. A reader's note. So Ron was one of the first interviews we did at Marketecture TV, and that we've made that interview free with registration, so no paywall. So if you, after listening to this, you want to watch that, just go to Marketecture TV and look for Rockerbox. With that, let's take a quick break, and then we're going to come back with so much news. We're going to really talk about Colossus a lot, which I was trying not to, but I guess we are. All right, we'll be back. This podcast is brought to you by Innovid and their Harmony initiative. Innovid believes that TV should be open for everyone and controlled by no one. And the time to make that vision a reality is now. That's why Innovid created Harmony, an industry-wide initiative to address the biggest challenges facing CTV advertising today. By optimizing at the infrastructure level, Harmony aims to improve efficiency, enhance transparency and control, and increase ROI, all while reducing carbon emissions and providing better viewing experiences for all. Find out more and get involved at innovid.com/harmony.
And we're back. Time for the news of the week. As we left off, it was a ton of news this week, so we'll try to organize it and put it into a couple of sections. And I think we'll start with the "This is not good" section. So 2 things to touch on here. The first is this Colossus kerfluffle, as the show notes say. So I'll frame it, and then Ari, you've been doing a bunch of work on this and having conversations, so I'll hand it over to you for a deep dive. So Colossus, which is an SSP, a DEI-centric SSP owned by Direct Digital Holdings, was accused by Analytics of misrepresenting IDs in OpenRTB fields. So effectively, the best cookie IDs were being duplicated, gaming the system, driving up CPMs, kind of doing all sorts of allegedly nefarious stuff. There was a response on this saying that, other SSPs are doing this. Analytics said that no SSPs studied during this one were doing this. Colossus blamed BidSwitch. Other SSPs that use BidSwitch didn't have the problem. So it seems like it's pretty unfortunately clear case against Colossus. Respected people like Goodway Group's Jay Friedman call this outright fraud. And this is, I think, generally an understatement, being extremely not good. And we're the verification providers. Total sidebar. All right, go ahead. Explain what's going on.
I saw this story come out, and I tweeted this. Who the hell is Colossus? I never even heard of them. I didn't want anything to do with this. But then I got pulled in. And this is like the Rashomon of ad tech. There are so many people involved with so many different opinions, and I've collected them all. So I want to be fact-based because, among other things, Direct Digital Holdings is suing Analytics. I don't want to be on the wrong side of a lawsuit, so I'm going to be buttoned up here. So Analytics reports that they studied many SSPs that were sending data through Prebid to Trade Desk, and then they saw the Trade Desk responses in the web browser. And in the Trade Desk responses, you could see whether the cookies matched, meaning the cookie ID that was sent to the Trade Desk versus the cookie ID that Trade Desk saw on the browser. And what Analytics reports said was that it was consistently mismatched when involved with Colossus, and the other SSPs had pretty minor mismatches. I don't want to mischaracterize what Analytics said, but the article in Ad Exchanger really implied that this was fraud. And further, there was interesting reporting in that first, Google had previously shut them off and then turned them back on. The Trade Desk gave comments that very much sounded like they did not want to trade with this partner, but were anyway. They basically said, we don't use it on open exchange. We only allow partners with private deals to buy from Colossus, which is pretty sus. Colossus came out and really threw BidSwitch under the bus. They said, this is BidSwitch's problem, not ours. All very intriguing situations. They also almost immediately threatened to sue Analytics, and they've since put out a press release saying they are suing Analytics. So those are all basically facts. Then it goes to Reddit, and there's a big debate on Reddit. And Dr. Fu defends Colossus. Apparently, they're a client of Dr. Fu. Dr. Fu says this is just how a Prebid works, which is not accurate. Sorry, Dr. Fu. And Digiday did a good coverage of this also. So I got on the phone with the CTO of Colossus last night, and CTO of the parent company named Anu Pillai, and Jeff Schmidt, who's the VP technology of Colossus. And I talked to them about their point of view here. So first of all, they emphatically deny any fraud. They were straight up, we are not doing this, on the record. We are not doing this. Okay, great. Got their point of view. Secondly, they had put out a video that the video is available with their press release. It's a very short video. And what it shows is that a cookie ID that is sent through Prebid might not match the cookie ID coming back from the Trade Desk. That video, I've spoken to numerous experts, and it is not compelling. There are numerous ways you can make the browser show what they showed in that video. And in fact, I asked friend of the pod, Mike O'Sullivan from Sincera, if he could reproduce what they showed, and he did. So there's a Loom video, which we'll tweet out tomorrow morning, of Mike Sincera reproducing their video in a very trivial way. So I told the Colossus people this, and, that their video, it's not that their video is wrong, it's just that it doesn't prove anything. The interesting part of this conversation with the Colossus folks was when I asked them about this Google's thing. I said, hey, Google shut you off a year ago, or some time ago. It wasn't a year ago. And then they put you back on. What happened? And they said, well, they worked through BidSwitch, so they didn't have any relationship with Google. They were being cut off, and they were asking for a meeting. They eventually got a meeting with Google, and the Google people brought to their attention lots of problems with their IDs. And they resolved this in the most interesting way, which was they deleted their entire cookie store and started over. That was the solution that the Colossus tech team did to solve the problems with Google. And when they did this, they said that it resolved the problem and that Google started spending more and more, right? Okay, so that is pretty interesting, and it kind of speaks to the fact. So if you believe them, if you believe there is no fraud here, right? I have no basis to believe there's fraud or not fraud. If you believe there's no fraud here, it is very possible that this company, with due respect to the people I spoke to, is not very sophisticated in their technology, and that this is a bug. I would say it is very possible that their user store has some pretty critical bugs in it, and they may be doing this by accident. That's I switched from facts to opinion there, but I think it's very possible that's what's going on. Now, the fact that they're suing Analytics and they're suing them so aggressively right away doesn't really lend credence to that fact. But on the other hand, you have to realize that this company is a public company and they've had numerous problems. Their auditor just quit, which isn't a great thing. So they may have their back against the wall in this situation and maybe acting kind of aggressively because of that. And then the last thing I said it was a sort of a Rashomon thing. I brought up earlier this point that in the Ad Exchange article that both Google and Trade Desk seem to not like this partner but continue to do business with them. And the background noise here, multiple off-the-record people have told me, is that there are numerous blue-chip brands who have commitments to buying DEI inventory, and these private deals are the only way they're going to hit their commitments, and they want to buy it even they don't care about the quality. And, I think that is a very interesting point. I won't kind of dive into that, but, there are challenges to meeting social commitments, and that's a lot of what's going on here is what multiple people have told me.
Ron, any reaction to this? Especially with the idea of like deleting, resetting cookies, all of that stuff is a little bit close to your department.
I mean, this is actually bringing me back a lot to my ad tech space, where I worked a lot
Exactly.
with SSB integrations, and I saw how easy it was to mimic fake impressions and change user IDs. We did it only for testing reasons, obviously, but I don't know, the idea that this was primarily just a bug based off what Ari kind of just walked, it does not seem that ridiculous. I've seen sillier things. That could very well be it. Honestly, I haven't dove as deep as Ari did that.
We will find out in discovery in the lawsuit if they continue. I mean, that'll be pretty easy to find if they were in fact doing something wrong or if they were not.
It is interesting though too. If it is the blue chip thing and folks needing to buy on their platform, it seems as if they'd be able to get high CPMs even with their existing user base. Again, I don't know why they would have to fake cookie IDs to get high bids.
Yeah. The Analytics report specifically said that they were replacing the cookie IDs. This is in Chrome, by the way. So these people have cookies. We're not replacing empty cookies. The allegation was they were replacing low-value cookies with high-value cookies, which really just seems like a lot of work considering everything else going on. And when I spoke to Mr. Schmidt, he said a couple things that made me think he wouldn't really know how to do this. And once again, I'm sorry, Mr. Schmidt. You gave me your time. It's great. You seem like technically adept, but the ad tech knowledge seemed a little weak in some ways. And I'm not sure this company could figure out how to do this fraud.
I don't know. We shall find out. Okay, we'll leave this one here. And yet another one from the not good department. So I'll just read the headline. Headline, and I quote, "Shadier than Forbes, premium publishers are partnering with content farms to make a quick programmatic buck." That's an ad exchanger. We'll link to it in the newsletter on Monday. So Sincera, investment by my firm, investment by Ari, hottest ad tech startup according to Marketecture in 2023, found publishers are partnering with third-party vendors that generate programmatic ad revenue via paid traffic and pointed to subdomains that the third-party vendors own. So the example in the article was spin.com, well-known premium site, have tons of original, quality original content. Effectively, what's happening is there's sub URLs that are being created, in this case, recommended.spin.com. And effectively, these firms are buying a lot of traffic on Facebook and other platforms, pointing it to these sites. These sites have sometimes content that is not related at all to Spin, sometimes coincidentally related to Spin, and just stuffed with ads. And Sincera actually found this because they were working with TTD as their partner to help weed out MFA or made for arbitrage. So again, super not good. And where are the verification providers in all this?
Yeah, so the vendors involved were Perion, which is your old outfit, Eric, Israeli company, and another Israeli company I've never heard of called Ubix. that are both doing this.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. The thing is, like, this is getting pretty political. I saw some pro-Palestinian protesters on the street, and they were chanting "From the river to the sea" name. That went over like a dead balloon. That's gonna be the name of this. That's gonna be the name of this podcast.
Definitely not. I mean, it goes back to what Chris said. And Ron, I'll let you jump in a second. Chris from Jounce, in that, just the correlation between paid traffic and MFA is just, pretty linear. So it's just a matter of like finding all of these practices where it's being done. And at the same time, you got to feel for publishers. And we'll talk about this in a second in the AI section, where their organic traffic, like, directly to URL is probably down to flat. Traffic from search down at times severely, and they still need to grow, and they need to survive, and they need to serve ads. Go ahead, Ron.
I mean, I think this all comes down to a problem of, you asked about the verification providers. I think we're all just trying to verify potentially for the wrong thing. Like, I would argue these sites are going to continue to exist, and it's a bit of a whack-a-mole. You get rid of them, and a new crop will come up. That's always going to be the case. But if we're actually, not to put on my attribution hat, but if we're actually measuring against outcomes, then this suddenly doesn't become relevant anymore. Like, you're not going to be serving ads on these websites if I'm not actually driving bottom of funnel revenue purchases for you. If you're just focusing on impressions and CPM and brand viewability and those sorts of KPIs, then these websites are going to continue to prosper. So I think it's just like the smarter marketers are not going to be spending there, and they're just not driving the ROI.
Yeah, I'll also point out the verification providers should be finding this, whereas the Colossus thing, the verification vendors would not be able to find that. They generally don't deal with user data validation.
Got it. Okay. Good point. Moving on. So there was two big announcements in the AI world this week. I guess the second one, but we'll cover it first, was Google at Google I/O. So they had like a ton of announcements around AI, tons of videos you can watch. But there was one that has everybody, basically freaking out, which is the public rollout or full rollout to 1 billion users of SGE, which is search-generated results. So, basically when you do a search on Google in the future, more and more of what you will see is in the form of an answer via recommended by Google's AI Gemini, and not a bunch of blue links pointing to various places on the internet, including publishers and everyone else. So, just continues the potential trend that we're seeing, or real trend that we're seeing, and concern of organic traffic and search traffic drying up, and traffic to publishers who rely on it for their monetization being a real issue. People are generally freaking out about this. I didn't see anyone say, "Hey, this is interesting and potentially positive because it allows for innovation," and anything around that. You guys have any POV on SGE?
I think the effect has been sort of priced into everyone's expectations of the next couple of years. It's bad, but it's not unsurprising. The other shoe hasn't really dropped because Google has not really said much, unless I missed it, about how they're going to monetize generated content, and whether there'll be blue links there or some other way to monetize it. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing that we'll hopefully see in the next year. Also, just an anecdote, this morning I searched for something pretty trivial, like how do I change the way my Messages app works on my phone. Google AI, it was the first time I saw an AI response in the wild. Totally wrong. Actually damaging. It told me to log out of iCloud and delete my messages or something crazy like that. And then below it was the correct answer. So I'm not impressed yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're just in a world where nobody knows what's going to happen, Google included, and they're freaking out as well. When you see OpenAI and what's going on there, of course they're freaking out. I at least appreciate that they're trying things, but to Eric's point there, if they're going to be generating content that's completely false, it'll be interesting to see what happens to Google. Like, are people even going to be going to search? And then you compare that to, I think it's Perplexity. They do a pretty good job with their responses. They have really good links and hyperlinks. You can go to the sources. So I think we don't even know what the format's going to be for search. Not even in 5 years, but in a month.
Yeah, something we've talked about a couple of times on the pod. Speaking of OpenAI, they had their announcement of GPT 4.0 the day before. Sounds like they put this together quickly to take some of the heat from Google's announcement off or shine off. So GPT 4.0 is, and I'll quote, "step towards much more natural human-computer interaction. It accepts as any input, any combination of text, audio, image, and video, and generates any combination of text, audio, and image outputs. So I recommend, we'll put it in the notes, watching the announcement video. It's only a minute long, but then also relevant to advertising, relevant to marketing. Scroll down and look at the exploration of capabilities drop down. So, I was impressed by this. Other people, weren't as impressed by this. Again, maybe I'm an easy audience, but basically the example is a text prompt along with a logo for OpenAI. It's like, here's the OpenAI logo. This is the actual OpenAI logo. Now create, some sort of branded content or branded placement for it. And the output was a high quality image of a coaster with the OpenAI logo. I've been playing around with this stuff, and the impact of, I think, everything around creative, A, because things are getting better and better, and B, because now you've got this text to image, text to video, voice to image, I think is pretty awesome. So, it's the beginning. I think a lot remains to be seen. But, we've had that Sam Altman quote that, we dropped a few weeks ago, I think, or a couple months ago, around how he thinks like 95% of all things in advertising marketing are just going to be taken over by AI. I can understand why he feels that way when his company is just starting to do things that are bleeding on the edge like this. I don't know if you guys had a chance to take a look and if you played with any of the other applications.
Yeah, I think the main lesson for me is you really don't want to be competing with Sam Altman. He seems like he will cut you. And so maybe if you're Google or Microsoft, you could compete with him. But if you're a startup who's just doing one little thing, like use AI to put your logo on something, it feels as though it's going to be a tough road.
I completely agree there. I think for the startups, the only move is how do you leverage AI on top of what you already have? You're not going to be building the foundation. On the creative side, I think it's awesome. One of the biggest, particularly a lot with channels like TikTok and Snap, like creative generation is probably one of the biggest problems there. So the idea that you can just get that generated at scale, fast, optimized quickly, I think it'll be a huge opportunity. I think actually it can drive really good ROI for brands. So I think it's a big win it's actually a big win. What that means for the people who are making the creatives before, TBD.
Yeah, I think also part of the announcement was that there's an app that you're going to be able to install on your desktop and drag things into it, and it can be aware of what's on your browser. That's a huge change. That's a huge change from texts and prompts and uploading spreadsheets. And you can just imagine just a couple steps away. It's like, go to this browser tab, analyze what's there, cut and paste that into this other browser tab, then, send a text message. All these things are very, very automatable by ordinary people once you're on the desktop.
So we've actually done that at Rockerbox. So I've logged into some clients' accounts. I've seen all of the results that we show for them, and I took a screenshot and I said, "What would you do with this data?" And it's unreal. I don't have to program against any APIs. It sees what a human sees. It can actually make pretty intelligent recommendations. So yeah, the app the desktop app is pretty awesome. I just installed it this morning.
Awesome. Okay, we'll get one more in and then we'll end it here. So upfronts were the past week or so. Netflix was 2 days ago, and the announcements coming out of it were super interesting and relevant to our world. So ad-supported accounts are now up to 40 million. It's up from 23 million in January. And they announced two things. So number one, they're going to launch their own ad tech platform by next year. So all of this controversy, are they going to partner their way in? Are they going to build their way in? Are they going to acquire their way in? I think we know the answer. Number one, they're going to build. But then number two, they're going to partner with programmatic companies. The three partners named were TTD, DV360, and Magnite as measurement companies, including iSpot and TVision, for both, additional ways to buy and sell, and obviously the measurement front. So the strategy seems to be coming together, which is super interesting. The other thing is, everybody loves to find quotes from the archives. I think there was both Netflix saying we'll never have ads and we'll never have live sports or something like that. Part of this was they announced a 3-year deal with the NFL for Christmas Day games. So there's going to be ads, there's going to be live sports. The line between Netflix and all of television is blurring. And I just remind before you guys jump in and comment that my prediction for 2024 that Netflix was going to let it rip with ad tech and advertising. So it's still only May, but your boy is kind of in the lead on this one.
It's a very daring prediction. I'm really happy about this announcement that they're going to be more open. I think it's good for everybody that they're allowing some demand-side platforms in there, as opposed to, say, Fire TV, which still appears to be very closed. Would love to see Amazon make a similar move. Just crack the door open a little bit. It'll really benefit your CPMs and your liquidity, and you can do things to preserve privacy. That's my point of view on that. Ron, what do you think, given what advertisers want about unified metrics, et cetera?
We see clients wanting to buy Netflix. We get asks, and we've been asked if we can measure it. So, I get why this is exciting. It's interesting too because I know today it's been primarily super Fortune 500 CPG kind of brands that exclusively really been on there. So I'm excited to get there and see some long-tail direct-to-consumer brand on Netflix. I think that'll be a fun day to see happening. Now, what's the actual KPI we're really optimizing for? Is it reach? Is it a linear kind of channel? Is it actual performance? I think we'll see after the performance starts to come in, and people sort of justify their decision after the fact, if anything. It's nice. I'm excited to see it opening up.
Absolutely. And then, Ari, you had one other thing from the Journal newsletter that you wanted to point out. What was that?
Seth Meyers' joke. He was at the upfronts, and he said, NBC is launching a new series called Destination X, or as it was originally titled, The Lindy Yaccarino Story. Ooh, Seth is very funny. All right, let's call it on that. This was a great episode. Hopefully we will not get sued. Eric, thanks as always. And Ron Jacobson from Rockerbox, thanks for dropping all your knowledge here.
It's been fun, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for subscribing to Marketecture. New interviews are added every week at marketecture.tv and your favorite podcasting app.